My name's Dr. Paul Brewerton, the Strengths Guy, Doctor of Psychology and Chair and Founder of StrengthScope. I podcast each week just as you're getting your head back into work mode to give you a positive, strengths-based boost into your week ahead. My podcasts are packed full of tips and tools to help you get the best out of your working week. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast. Hi, my name is Dr. Paul Brewerton, the Strengths Guy, Doctor of Organisational Psychology, Chartered Occupational Psychologist, and Founder and Chair of StrengthScope. I'm very excited today to have on the show Nyawera Kibuka. Hello, Nyawera.
Hi, good afternoon.
So I'm in the south of the UK. Whereabouts are you joining us from?
Dialing in from Nairobi, Kenya, which is in East Africa.
I said cool. It is not cool there right now, right?
No, it's quite warm.
Yes, but you were just telling me that today it's hopefully going to rain, which is a good thing.
It is. It's been incredibly warm, temperatures of 37, 35 degrees.
Wow.
So unfortunately, we're experiencing drought.
Yeah.
So we do need the rain. So we're looking forward to rain. Yeah.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed you get the rain.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Let me intro you. And if I get anything wrong, just tell me. But hopefully this will all be accurate. So Nyawera is the founder, CEO, and director of Cedar Africa Group, a boutique advisory and training firm specializing in talent, leadership, and change management. Cedar Africa has just celebrated 10 years of supporting individuals and organizations through change in East Africa. And they have a strong desire to see positive change and growth in leaders and organizations in the complex and volatile environments they operate in. Is that all accurate?
Well done, 100%.
Thank you. And prior to founding Cedar, Nyawera was a people and change consultant in 2 global professional consulting firms where she led and implemented various transformation projects. So hello again. And it's really good to have you. So thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk about leadership in times of change and have a conversation about what leaders need to do more of, less of, to learn and to focus on during change. So I guess the focus here is this is about the good of the people that they lead, but it's also about their own health and well-being too. And the role of strengths in that as well. So let me start, as I always do, by asking you to describe your entire life story in not a huge amount of time from birth to now, and maybe finishing off where you are or how you got to where you are right now, and maybe the role of strengths in all of that as well. So how that's kind of come into your world. So Nyawera, over to you.
Thanks. Thank you once again, Paul, for this opportunity. I'm glad to be on this platform with you. As I shared, I grew up in Nairobi, born in Nairobi, Kenya. Did my early school years here, primary school, and then was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to do my A-levels in the UK.
Okay.
So transitioned to the UK for a period of 2 years, quite a difficult transition, and was able to complete not just my A-levels, but part of my university education there as well.
What did you choose, by the way, as A-level subjects?
Good question. Biology, chemistry, and English.
Okay.
And those were not, English was my strongest subject, but biology and chemistry, I think were subjects I selected because I thought that was what was acceptable. I thought I'd end up going to medical school or, pursuing sort of a science-based degree. But in hindsight, that was the wrong selection of subjects.
Right.
So, which is actually what led me to eventually move to Canada to complete my university education, because at that time, I think I wanted to explore more. I wasn't content in the degree choice that I had selected in the UK, and I just wanted an opportunity to discover. And so during that time, found subjects that I enjoyed around organizational behavior, human resources, learning and development. Sociology, just opened my mind up to a completely different sort of way of understanding.
Yeah.
And then moved back to Kenya and managed to secure a job in a global consulting company in the area of people and change. And I enjoyed my time. We were designing and implementing large-scale projects that were affecting people and culture. But I think also what was really nice about it was, okay, these were environments that are very results oriented. They're very competitive. They are driven on targets. And I enjoyed that. I was energized by, shall I say, going for the kill, so to speak. Right. And so just seeing, how can we push performance, push expectations. So really thrived in 2 consulting firms at that time. And I think that's when my interest in entrepreneurship was triggered. And so made a bold move to leave, which was also sort of against the norm at the time. Like, who leaves global consulting companies? I do. And the chance to create a new organization, I think, is what led me to that decision to transition and start CEDA. So building an organization from the ground up, creating solutions to address the market, seeking to understand what does the market want, what are the gaps, and I think that's how I'd describe my entire entrepreneurship journey, just the opportunity to create, which plays into my strengths because I enjoy creating things. If I'm not in business, I'm baking. Did I mention, Paul, that I've attended professional cake decorating classes?
Outstanding. This is great to hear. Like, I love to hear about passions, outside of work as well as at work, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love creating things. And so I think earlier part of my career, the companies I worked with, I think, were energizing because they were very results focused, and that is something that I connected to, significantly. And then in this second half of my career, I think it's the opportunity to create, the opportunity to disrupt, the opportunity to think out of the box. I think that's what speaks to me now in this season.
Yeah, amazing. You've mentioned strengths a couple of times in all of that, and creativity and results focus. Are they 2 of your significant 7 strengths?
They are results focus, creativity, compassion, which I think we are mostly drawn to people and change and culture. Efficiency, yes. So yes, creativity and results is 2 of my top strengths.
Yeah, it's really interesting as well that you describe them almost as like they are the most important central strengths for different chapters of your career so far. And I think that increasingly in my coaching practice, I've heard that from people, where they have maybe 1 strength, maybe 2, that are really defining them right now. And I'm interested, without going too far off track, but we're talking about your experiences. We're also going to go on to talk about the importance of self-awareness within leaders. I'm interested to know how you've managed those strengths that you have to ensure that they stay in a balanced place, rather than going overwhelming you almost, or overwhelming others by going into overdrive. Is that something you've been aware of?
So I wish I could say that I've been able to balance my strengths, if I could be a bit open about it.
For sure.
I think having come from an environment that was very results focused, when I began the company, that was my sole focus: achievement, targets, making an impact. That unfortunately has gone into overdrive. And the thing with overdrive, when you use your strengths too much, they can become a limitation. They can lead to burnout. And so I have experienced some level of leadership burnout or entrepreneurship burnout. But it's that understanding that actually I need to be more balanced in how I utilize the other things that come naturally to me. So like creativity. And through coaching, I think every leader needs a coach. Through coaching, I think my coach has helped me realize that perhaps even just how my role is designed, my role needs to be designed to enable my other strengths to come out, and not over rely on a strength that I have used for the bulk of my career.
Yeah, Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes so much sense. And that's segueing us beautifully actually into the next question, the area for discussion, if you like. So how do you feel leaders can be more effective in times of change? What do you feel they should do more of and less of?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think the first thing is we have to recognize that I think leaders are under immense pressure.
Yeah.
The economic environment is challenging, global economy is challenging, we're navigating wars, we're navigating climate change. I think the rates of disruption are really high, and that in itself creates pressure. So,
Mm.
change does elicit stress and pressure.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when we're under pressure, we tend to gravitate to habits or tendencies that are a bit negative.
Mm.
And so, what we're seeing, the way we're seeing leaders cope
Hmm.
with this time of disruption is control,
Mm.
micromanaging,
Hmm.
sort of using fear as a weapon to drive performance, not recognizing the opportunity that disruption presents to innovate and create and grow, but focusing on a very sort of, I should say, being very negative in their approach to survive. And I suppose it's a coping mechanism. Um, so I think one of the things we'd want to see leaders do less of is maybe not focus so much on the negative, but focus on the positive. Change, seek to look for the opportunities, look for the lessons and opportunities
Yeah.
within that times of change. Change the narrative in the
Mm.
organization to
Mm.
one that sort of elicits trust and engagement and commitment. And then also just being self-aware. If you, like I said, my results focus during times of stress goes into overdrive. And so how then do I show up for my people? So I think from what I feel leaders should do more of is, like I said, balancing the negative with a positive, changing the narratives in their organizations to sort of inspire growth, potential innovation, and also be seen, be visible, be real.
Mm.
People want to see their leaders. They want to see and feel their leaders. So being
Yeah.
present and visible,
Yeah.
I think is important.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I was going to ask you what changes you feel, are needed in the leadership community, but I think actually you've pretty much spoken to that. There's a lot in there, right? And I think it's great that you started by positioning this as, it's really tough right now. Like the reality is if you're a leader, um, currently, it's probably the hardest context you could face into wherever you are a leader in the world. Um, I can't remember a time that was more turbulent and difficult, volatile, uncertain, all of the VUCA words. There's so much in there that you just mentioned that I'd like to get into. The challenge of overdrive when under pressure, and how people can kind of just revert to that when they're feeling that the stress is on, and also your own kind of, as a leader, your own mental health and well-being in that context. Who's looking after the leader, and as you say, leaders need coaches, a space that's safe for them to be able to explore what's going on, maybe to vent if that's going to help rather than doing that in the workplace. I think that's absolutely right. And the creation of that safe space for them can then, encourage the creation of more psychological safety when they get into the workplace because they're experiencing that themselves. But I think it's great you started there because essentially it's saying, look, give leaders a break, right? And leaders, give yourselves a break.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, these are tough times. It's a tough gig anyway. For many leaders, they didn't ask for it. They just turned up as leaders in a particular role or a particular stage of their careers. There's not that many who see leadership as a vocation. I think for many people, it's just a matter of ascending the ladder, and then finding yourself managing people when actually what you really enjoy and where you really feel your strengths can come to the fore is working on the technical side, which it's a really tough gig, I think.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would want to
No, I was
respond
just
to
going
there?
to just pick up to something that you said. I think as leaders, we probably need to be a bit kinder to ourselves.
Yeah.
Um, have a bit more self-compassion. I know we talk a lot about self-compassion, but I sometimes feel that as leaders, we probably don't know how to apply it to ourselves. We can apply it to others, but we're very hard on ourselves when we don't deliver results, the types of decisions that we're making. And I think, just leaders exercise just more self-compassion.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned you've got a compassion strength. So I'm interested, right? I mean, like as we in Strengths Go, we're talking about that really as regards it playing out in supporting other people. So it's about looking after other people, nurturing other people. Essentially, it's an arm around the shoulder, right? And getting energy from that. What's your learning, Nyawera, been on, self-compassion, as you just talked about? Have you been able to take that compassion strength and internalize it at all?
Yeah, a great question, Paul. It's a journey. I think, it might, if I talk about myself, expending compassion on others is something that comes very natural. But doing it to myself, who's a sort of a high achiever, it's a new habit I have to cultivate. And I'm sure there are many other leaders that I hope will probably connect with that. So I think cultivating that internal self-compassion is a journey. I think that's where your coaches and your mentors come in terms of just helping remind you of the importance of that and being aware that, as much as you're expending compassion to others, also expend it to yourself and apply it to yourself. Be more conscious and intentional about doing that.
I think that's it. I think it is about being aware of the need for that. So staying conscious of it. And then, as you say, being intentional in taking time for yourself, breaks, whatever it is that's going to refill the battery, which is going to be different for each individual.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So thinking again about change and all the pressures and challenges that can bring, what are the leadership habits, the leadership behaviors that you feel undermine effectiveness during times of change? You touched on some of these, with micromanagement, etc. What else do you feel, can get in the way of effective leadership?
So I think because a leader is accountable for results, a leader is accountable for delivery of certain organizational outcomes. Leaders will overemphasize that during times of change at the expense of creating a clear picture of success. What does the end state look like? What does the finish line look like? At the expense of engaging, empowering people. I like to say remaining open and curious to new ideas and fresh thinking. And so we lean heavily on the execution and at the expense of the time spent to create vision and rally people behind that vision. People want meaning and purpose in their work. I want to know how my day-to-day activities are connecting to this big picture and how I contribute to that. But I also want to be engaged. I also want to be inspired. And so I think that's the undermining that I feel that we see.
So you're speaking there to, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but the StrengthsScope leadership habits, right? So that initial sharing vision, we talk about in that using that tool. And I was going to ask you actually, and then kind of answer the question by saying StrengthsScope leader can do this. If people can or need to understand what their benchmark is, like where are they, as regards other people's experience of them, effectively sharing their vision. That's a way of doing it, right? It's gaining feedback from other people, and with the StrengthsScope leader tool, that's how it works. You put your own views in to the system, but you also get feedback from a number of other stakeholders who will share with you whether they experience that, that vision in the way that you're intending, whether they feel engaged in the way that you want them to, as well as effective execution. And then there's the whole continuous improvement learning cycle that's included in that model as well. But was that intentional, or was it just
no
chance?
I think it's actually it's truly a coincidence, because I think during a lot of our work involves engaging with teams who are either leading change or experiencing change. And the feedback is the same: be seen, be more visible, communicate more directly. begin with the end in mind. Show us what the future looks like. How does all change connect to the strategy and the bigger picture? And so it's that piece that is typically missing at the expense of, results, expectations, standards, and so forth.
So true, right? And it's that, you're right, the search for meaning is so important now, increasingly so, as we go through the generations now. We're into alpha, and so I have 2 teenage boys. They're going to be, generation alpha coming into the workplace. They're already pretty much, well, one of them's working already. And they need and want meaning. We all do, but I think it's an increasing expectation, for people coming into the workplace of their leaders. Explain to me how what I'm doing makes a difference. Explain and show me what your vision is for this team, within this organization. Because if I don't understand that, why would I want to stay? I need to feel that you're offering me something different to what I could maybe get on my own, or maybe I could get somewhere else. I think that there are so many more maybe options available to people now, or people believe or feel empowered that they can go and, manage their own careers. They don't necessarily need an organization to help and support them to do that. So you've got to always work as a leader, I think, to keep restating that vision, and repainting the picture, and not feel that that's just a one-off. Plus new people come into the team and, they maybe haven't heard that before. So yeah, really important to keep the stories alive. I think you're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so from a personal point of view, and we kind of touched on this because we were talking about, psychological well-being, etc. But from a personal point of view, how do you feel leaders can stay resilient and then can build resilience? And in fact, what is resilience? Let's start with that. But particularly during times of change where the pressure's really on.
I mean, how I define resilience is just the ability to bounce back from difficulties. The ability to sort of emerge stronger after an extended period of pressure. The reality is, I think that not everybody's naturally resilient. It's not everybody sort of thrives in challenges and setbacks. And so I think as a leader, it's just recognizing, first of all, which bucket are you? Are you the type that do get energized by challenges and, and can quickly pivot and think through solutions? Or are you like me, who struggles sometimes with setback and challenges? But I think the main thing, which goes back to what I was saying about self-awareness, is if you have an understanding that, for example, I'm not very high in my resilience, the question is, what else can you tap into and lean into that helps you during those times of pressure and difficulty? And so I don't think there's sort of a one-way answer around this whole discussion of resilience. I think it goes back to that just awareness. If this is not something that comes naturally to me, what do I lean into? What do I tap into? Is it relationships? Maybe it's cultivating relationships that give me meaning and purpose during times of pressure, new perspectives. Maybe it's hope and optimism. So I think it really depends. I know this morning, actually, I was reading some research and it was saying that even with, and maybe this is a question I can throw back at you, Paul, even if one is not naturally resilient, they can grow their resilience. So even if it's not an innate characteristic, I don't know what you think about that.
I completely agree. I think there are habits you can cultivate which will help you become more resilient. I think it's a relatively small proportion of people who actually get energy from change, or a lot of energy from change. I think for the majority of people, it is something that's going to create almost a stress response. But I think you're absolutely right. If you look for the areas that will energize you, during a time of pressure, whether that is in relationships, whether that is in, experiencing positive emotions, whatever you can key into, that's really going to work for you. That will help you to feel more resilient when you're facing into turbulence and change, because you'll feel you have choice, that you can, go to a particular strength area, a particular source of energy that's going to work for you. go to a particular place, either, you know, in your own mind, or, you know, in reality, that's going to recharge you, that's going to re-energize you. Spending time outside in nature, spending time with your family, baking, you know, may work for some. Seriously, I mean, like that could be hugely, you know, just takes you away from that constant cycle of thinking that isn't really working for you. It takes you somewhere else, and it helps to create the opportunity for breakthrough as well. So I think resilience is, yeah, there is an innate characteristic there. Probably there is a trait there for some people. I think for most people, it's more state-based, it's more habit-based, and it is about, you know, creating um, the conditions that enable you to be more resilient in your own life by knowing what it is that you need to draw on to feel you can adapt to and power through challenges. And again, back to self-compassion, doing the things that are going to make you feel, you know, feel okay in the moment. So yeah, I think it's a huge area. It's got a bit of bad rep as well now, resilience, almost resilience training. We're going to give you some resilience training in this organization. Oh, why would you do that? What does that mean is coming now? You know, like it's there's a bit of a feeling of, you know, I'm not sure I want any more change. So please don't give me the sticking plaster of resilience training. But I think it ultimately comes down to you as an individual going on your own journey and figuring out, you know, the levels of change that are going to be energizing to you and when that's going to tip into something that's no longer productive for you, and then having coping strategies that bring you back into thriving as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. And I'll just you know, something that you've said that's just triggered a thought. I think also just from an organizational context, I think leaders help foster that resilience in their organizations by the behaviors they model, by their mindsets, again, by the narrative, the language that they're using. Is it a safe place, for example, you know, that people can question, can voice you know, their concerns and so forth. So I just think that resilience training is fine, but I think leaders have a critical role in just embedding that trait as well in the organization.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wondering how you feel leaders can inspire better performance and achieve greater results using, you know, certain leadership habits or behaviors. You know, what do you think there? What should they focus on to get the performance that's needed?
Yeah. Environments. I think leaders perhaps don't pay enough attention to creating environments that enable their people to bring their best selves to work.
Yeah.
If I am spending the bulk of my day in the workplace, you want to be in a place that is engaging, is pushing you to your full potential, is utilizing all your skills and capabilities.
Yeah.
So I think leaders need to be intentional in creating those kind of environments that are inclusive, environments that encourage creativity, innovative thinking, feedback, being sort of, like to say, consultative. So you know, in addition to all the things that leaders already do, setting standards, expectations, and so forth, I really think it's the environment. Is the environment enabling me to bring my best, my skills, my best self to the workplace?
Yeah, and it's really interesting you mentioned there around inclusion, the creation of an inclusive environment, because as you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, but each individual in a team that someone's leading will have a different level that they're retaining. They will have a different set of strengths and areas that they can, you know, draw on in order to achieve high performance. They'll be just calibrated differently because they're different. So actually that kind of creation of an inclusive space where everyone has value, everyone's voice needs to be heard, I think is essential. So I think, you know, absolutely right. But it's what environment am I trying to create? And actually that's bringing us, I think, really nicely into a question I had in my mind. And we touched on it a little bit earlier on. But the idea of psychological safety, you know, we've talked about it briefly. But what do you feel that is? And how do you feel that's relevant in change, particularly? So yeah, psychological safety, fascinating. It's a very current topic, right?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think So when I think of psychological safety, I think it's the space, it's creating a space in which I don't fear punishment and humiliation.
Yeah.
It's a space where I'm just saying but people can voice their concerns. They can tactfully challenge status quo. We can have open disagreements. It's fine to disagree and to work through an issue.
Yeah.
And why I think it's important during change is, because of the level of disruption that, organizations around the world are going through, the need to innovate, the need to problem solve, the need for people to be empowered to think out of the box is significant. But you can't do that unless people feel safe to create, to share their solutions, to share their ideas.
Yeah.
And that's what you want during times of disruption, because you need that disruptive idea. You need that innovative idea that's going to disrupt the market.
Yeah.
But as a leader, you can squash that. You can squash that by your behaviors, by your mindset, by your language.
Yeah.
And so that space of psychological safety is so critical during times of change, because you want your teams empowered. You want the best solutions coming out of your team. You want your teams thinking creatively. You want them solution oriented.
Yeah.
So don't squash that.
Yeah, right. And so what's the counter to that? What are the behaviors that leaders should be engaging in? I mean, if you're saying something like, look, all ideas are welcome, you can voice any idea, right? The worst thing you can do is, once you've done that, if you're trying to build psychological safety, is then criticize an idea that is put on the table that you don't agree with. Because of course it's doing the opposite of what you just said you wanted. And it's really hard sometimes. Someone could say something and you're thinking, we tried that 2 years ago and it just didn't work. But that they maybe don't know that, or maybe now's the time to think of it differently again and give it another go. But that curating that open-mindedness is vital, in order to create psychological safety, and that growth mindset, that failure is not just acceptable, it's to be welcomed, because then it creates the opportunity to learn. And if we're learning by failing, we fail fast, we move on, we try again with something iterated or something completely different, then everybody starts to move in that direction of innovation, rather than feeling they have to stick with what they know, which in times of change, people are most likely to stick with the familiar. So you have to work doubly hard, right?
Absolutely. I think what comes to my mind is, then a leader has to remain very curious.
Yeah, nice.
Very open to different ideas and opinions, and not want to revert back to what they've known, which is comfortable. It's a comfortable space to be in, right? Like, this is all I know. But and it goes back to what I was saying earlier about every leader, I think, needs a coach. Again, it's that safe space to air that discomfort, that leaders don't know everything. The times that we're in, I don't think anybody has all the answers. And so it's that humble position of, I actually don't know, but I'll remain open and curious to see how I shepherd this process.
Yeah, love that. And you're saying all leaders need a coach. Fully agree. I think as well, every employee ideally can have a coach in their leader. If the leader has that experience, if they understand the principles of coaching, that can really help. That will in itself create a safe space for employees to feel as though they're being heard, they're being listened to, they're being supported in their learning journey, and with their own well-being during change, which can come under significant pressure too. So I think there can be almost a coaching cascade, where leaders, when they have that experience, can develop skills around coaching themselves. It's not to say it comes naturally to everybody, but it's definitely a skills-based thing. I think there's very few people who are naturally fabulous coaches. I think all coaches, professional and otherwise, need to understand what the process of coaching actually looks like, and so experiencing it is one way, but also getting input from some expertise from maybe externally is also another important part of that process.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell me about, we've talked about it a bit, but this idea of self-awareness and particularly authentic leadership, what do you see as the benefits of authentic leadership, and also the risks?
Mm. So, I think first of all, authentic leadership is just recognizing one's uniqueness, and being comfortable in that uniqueness.
Yeah,
So sort of, I like to think of authenticity as not being one way in private and then a different way in public. It's
yeah,
just being unique and being comfortable in that uniqueness in how I show up in the organization as a leader.
yeah.
And I think the more authentic you are, I think it's very evident when you're around an authentic leader. They're more engaging. They seem to cultivate a lot of trust around them and commitment. um, I think there's almost like a natural magnet,
Mm,
to a leader that shows up authentically versus
yeah.
one that doesn't. And so I think the downside of just not being authentic in one's leadership is trying to fit in a leadership personality that's not your
Mm,
own, or trying to fit into a leadership narrative or script
mm,
that's just that's not unique to you.
mm,
And so I think one of the other benefits of authenticity is probably just inspiring better results,
mm,
better engagement, better performance,
mm,
because it's more trust in the organization and more
mm.
commitment with those that you're leading. Yeah.
Yeah. What about, I mean, do you see any downsides to authentic leadership? You know, if you take it to an extreme, right? Because authentic leadership in its most extreme form on the spectrum could look like, you know, I'm just being me. So kind of,
Yeah.
and actually, I'm never going to make an excuse. I'm just going to behave as I behave, you know, kind of
Yeah.
suck it up because that's just what
Yeah.
I'm like.
Which just sounds irresponsible.
Right.
It just sounds like irresponsible behavior. I think authentic leaders um, are self-aware and carry that authenticity with responsibility.
Love it.
And so it's not an excuse for irresponsibility or
Yeah.
reckless behavior that sort of jeopardizes the organization and the team.
Yeah.
So it's not a, oh, this is like who I am, take it or leave it. No,
Yeah.
I think it's just, yeah, being responsible in your leadership.
I love that authenticity with responsibility. And that's so powerful, you know, because I think that there is a risk with authenticity that people could see it as an excuse to, you know, just kind of not not behave in a responsible way as a leader. And, you know, just to have that in your mind, it's this
Mm,
plus this,
yeah.
you know, so be you, but do it
Mm,
skillfully, right?
absolutely.
Do the work, learn how to do that, you know, learn how other people perceive you
Yeah.
in the way that you're showing up, you know. And I think the other part that was really powerful in what you just said is be comfortable being you. I think that's really challenging for a lot of leaders. So much easier to just fit into the template that you said. Well, I say
Mm,
easier. The reality, of course, is that in the end is going to feel um, it's going to create a sense of dis-ease or unease for others as well, because you are just kind of fulfilling a role rather than being yourself. But initially, it looks like what many leaders feel that they should do. I think initially, when they move into leadership role, you know, there's a competency framework in the organization. It tells me exactly what I need to do in order to be an effective leader. Therefore, that's the way that I need to behave. I can't really be me. I just need to be a collection of competencies. Um, the truth is, people are spiky, people are messy, leaders are no different, and actually stepping into who you really are, you know, and showing and sharing some of your vulnerabilities, some of your passions and your strengths
yep.
is essential to showing up authentically, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think you people want to be led by authentic leaders. People want to see, I'm going to say the vulnerability, and I'm caveating that. People want to be led by leaders who are unique and true to themselves, because
Yeah,
they, as well as people, want to show up to the organizations authentically. And so, any leader then curtailing that by trying to be something that they're not, I
yeah,
think you just hurt the entire environment, because it's a
100%.
system. Yeah.
Totally that. Again, it comes back to psychological safety, right? You're going to create the conditions for psychological safety. You're going to create the environment for innovation by showing up as you and encouraging that in other people, rather than demanding that people behave according exactly to their role and job description, you know, and that's it, that's who they are. It's
Yeah.
not who they are, that's the role. It's a different thing entirely.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, I'd love to hear actually if you've got any suggestions, any kind of resources that you would recommend for people, books or TED Talks or videos, whatever, TikTok, because that's a thing now.
Oh, I can't advise on TikTok. I'm still trying to navigate it myself with teenagers. But
Tell me about it.
I need a whole manual on that. But I think if I think about what am I reading right now, I'm reading Leadership Pipeline by Ram Charan.
Okay.
Very interesting book. In terms of just, I think how different you need to think differently as a leader as you progress up in an organization.
Yeah.
Fantastic book. The other book that I'm reading that I found quite interesting is Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Yeah.
And the whole need to sort of just the differences between a fixed and a growth mindset.
Yes.
And I think how a growth mindset can help you as a leader.
Yeah.
All the other resources I'm reading right now, Paul, are around teenagehood and navigating choppy waters of teenagers. So
good on you for reading up on that, though, right? I think like the natural response is just, oh no, like what can I do? Like nothing works, rather than keeping going. I love that. Good on you.
No, because somebody else is going through the same challenges that I'm
Really?
facing, and I'm sure somebody's written about this. So
Good.
just to understand what's going on in the mind of my teenagers and why they do things the way they do, and how I should show up as a parent. So
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's a whole different conversation, but I would love to find out which books or resources you found really helpful, because it's not an easy thing. And who are you? You aren't that person that I knew 2 years ago. Who is this now? And then another 2 years goes by. Oh, you're there again, but you're just
next podcast.
Next podcast for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Strengths in parenting. I think that's one for future. So Nyawera, it'd be great if you could give us actually we'll put these on the show notes, but your contact details. I mean, do the shout out now as well. So what's the best way of getting in touch with you if people want to do that?
Sure. So my LinkedIn profile, Nyawera Kibuka, or our company page, Cedar Africa Group, which is also our website. I think those two channels and my email, nyawera@cedarafricagroup.com. Yeah.
Perfect. So if people weren't able to write quick enough, they'll be in the show notes. Which if you get over to the StrengthsCope website, that's where they'll be. So Nyawera, I'd love to say thank you again for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Amazing insights into leadership through change, and I think that's just been such a stimulating conversation. It's got me thinking about all sorts of things. Appreciative inquiry. We didn't have time to talk about, but there's a whole raft of things. It's just kind of got me re-engaged in thinking about and kind of jumping off and looking at in more detail. So thank you for that inspo. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I've really enjoyed the discussion, Paul, and to the audience that are listening, thank you as well for this time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nyawera.